All right, I think this is episode 8 of Caffeine, Carbs, and Kilos. I'll post it on the One Up story and then on my lifting account as well. We are on Spotify. We haven't explored how to get on Apple Podcasts or anything like that. Spotify was the number one requested, so figured that one out. We're going to be on Spotify. We'll still post to YouTube if you want to see our smiling faces or their smiling faces, because when I'm talking, I don't smile, apparently, looking back at some of the videos. Today, I got Matt with me. We are going to be going over quite a few topics here on my handy-dandy yellow legal pad, because I'd use my notes app, and Kelsey would stop making fun of me if I didn't need to record with my phone.
Yeah.
So I have all of our topics written down here. We're going to be going over a lot on the powerlifting side of things. Just some stuff from a couple articles I've read recently, a couple videos I've watched, couple like observances I've had on like the sport, and I don't know, just some personal, I don't know if I can call them afflictions, but sometimes it might be afflictions. But I mean, yeah, we can just get into it, because I got a whole list here, and knowing Matt and myself, we'll go down a couple rabbit holes trying to read them all. And so I think we'll start out with like powerlifting as a sport and what it is. And I touched on this end of last podcast where I said that like people, for some reason, to me, it feels they're going away from lifting for a total, and they're all in on like being a specialist, or like they're built to deadlift, so they say, oh, my deadlift will carry my total, I don't need to worry about it. Or, oh, I'll open with a big squat, and because everything else is kind of meh, so I'll be fine. And I personally, I may be better at squats and deadlifts just because of my lower body musculature and build, but at the same time, I feel myself more focused on the total, and I feel not enough people are focused on a total and too much in specialization within just 3 lifts.
Yeah. I like play to people's strengths for sure when it comes to like from a programming aspect. Try your best to do that while still kind of working out the kinks of whatever lifts may be lacking. But yeah, when it comes to being well-rounded, I think this is like definitely a sport that a person needs to strive to be as well-rounded as possible, because it's like with other like a lot of team sports, everyone has a position that they play and they practice with that position primarily. They aren't expected to do everything else. They're expected to be good at a few things and that's it. But this is something where it's like you kind of have to be just good at all 3 of the aspects that this provides. So that's and that's just part of it. And so just increasing the total is definitely something that I personally, I'm never really on my phone a whole lot when it comes to like looking at people like in the powerlifting world and everything, seeing like all the specialists and everything with that. I'm just in my own little world, my own little bubble. So it's like when you say like people are pushing, like I know there's freaks that like will pull a certain amount. They're just so good at that, but it's like, oh, they're not actually training their other lifts. Or like they're not pushing the other lifts to an intensity of that nature, or like the similar approach. That kind of like boggles my mind a little bit.
Yeah, I would say, and maybe social media has skewed our view to the point where some of those people that are those specialists, we only see those lifts because that's the ones they feel comfortable posting. They feel like, oh, this weight is like crazy, and I'm gonna post this one, but like I'm good at this one, but no matter how much I work on, say, my bench, it doesn't go up as fast, so they never post that one. And so maybe it is like a skewed social media thing where that's all they post because that's all they feel comfortable posting. But at the same time, I don't know. That's just what I've seen, and
I never post my bench, so I understand that. I understand that.
Fair. I don't know. And something you touched on a couple minutes ago about not really a team sport. You have to be good at all 3. Kind of leads us into another topic we can get into in a second about competing and competing against yourself primarily. But yeah, I don't know. It's just from what I've seen, and like I said, social media might skew it, but I feel some people choose to think and maybe it is a mental thing entirely, where people think they're better at this one lift, so they put everything they have into the training session for that one lift, and then everything else are like, oh, I don't know if I'm as good at this lift, so maybe I won't put everything I have into this instead. And so it's a mental thing where they know they're good at this lift, so they put their entire week's energy into that training session, and then the other ones they're either shot or mentally they're like, I'm not good at this. I'm not gonna push it as hard because I know it'll probably be meh.
Yeah, and that's something that kind of, I don't know. It's you got to do the things that you don't like to do, regardless. Like if you want to just be good at anything, there's going to be an aspect of that training or approach that you're probably not going to enjoy. There's probably going to be multiple approaches, and I'm learning that even with doing like boxing too. There's things that I'm not enjoying for that, but there are things that I really do enjoy, and I'm kind of teetering back and forth and using the part that I really enjoy to kind of fuel me through the parts that I don't enjoy. And then obviously my experience with this, I'm just like, I know I kind of just have to do it. So I just do it.
Yeah.
And try to put the best amount of effort that you can. Obviously, when you're really excited to do something, you're going to be able to apply the intensity needed at a much quicker rate than it is when you're just doing something that you really don't want to do. You're going to be dragging your feet. You're probably going to be dragging your feet the entire session. You might turn what should be an hour and a half session into almost a 2.5 hour session just from dragging your feet alone. And yeah, like you can work on some discipline to maybe shorten that time frame, or if you're just getting the stuff done too, by all means. And when it comes to like even some people having like set rests, and if they go beyond that, that's totally fine. There's more and more studies coming out anyways that show that longer rests in regards to even hypertrophy, and especially we already know like strength training wise are promoted quite a bit.
Yeah.
So and like I forgot which, I can't really quote the study in itself because I don't remember the people that led it, but I just remember reading through something briefly where it was in comparison of like 1 minute rest breaks to about 3 to 4 minute rest breaks in hypertrophy, and there was no change. And
that's interesting. I wonder if like,
I think it was just done using.
Was that just strength? Was that
pure? No, that was just hypertrophy. Like there was just 3 to I think like 5 sets of 12 rep range. I think using leg press. I think it was primarily leg driven movements that they used in comparison for that.
I guess my primary question on that, were they testing muscular strength? Were they testing VO2 max next to it, or was it just
for hypertrophy? No, they were doing like CSA. Like no, I wouldn't say CSA, and that they didn't like do a muscle biopsy by any means, but they definitely were measuring just size of the extremity.
Okay. I would say, because I mean, in my experience, I guess with decreasing your rest periods, what you're primarily doing is building your work capacity. Like you said, there's almost no change in rest periods, but maybe there's a change in your work capacity and your VO2 maxes. That's what I was asking.
And they I don't think that was the interest of that study in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, no, definitely working on being able to doing rest with like work capacity, that being able to do a certain amount of work in a certain amount of time. Your aerobic capability, being able just to perform that work with minimal amount of rest and be able to just kind of just do things back to back to back. That is something that, having those short rest breaks will kind of promote a lot more than allowing yourself to kind of recuperate and get closer to like that 100%. So, but when it comes to, like this sport, like, getting to that point where you're getting to that exhaustive state. Exhaustive state. Okay. I might have just didn't say that word right 3 times in a row. So, getting to that point when it comes to strength training, at least when it comes to like doing things back to back to back, the practicality of it, I don't really think is truly there for at least this sport, because you're not even doing a whole lot of things back to back. Even in competitions, even in small competitions, they're still going to pace things to where people have an adequate amount of rest.
Yeah.
It's nice to feel like you're going to get fatigued with a lot of high intensity, but doing high intensity lifts, especially multiple of them in a day, that's going to be kind of that conditioning in itself with those appropriate rest breaks. But obviously, and then you get down to any endurance sport, that's a completely different story. That's just flipped.
That's fair. I was saying on that too. I actually read an article last night. It was, gosh, Dave Tate wrote it for T Nation back in like 2004. Back when the internet and powerlifting and bodybuilding was all online forums before, the internet truly took off. And he was within that article literally talking about just it was either a made up story or something real. But if it was a made up story, it's super interesting. Just about some kid that went to going to get lunch with a friend at a hotel, saw powerlifting meet in the conference room, and he was walking, amongst these mass monsters. Back when powerlifting first started, it was all equipped and all massive people. But he was watching some dude break a deadlift record and went back behind the curtain afterwards and went and talked to the guy, and the guy invited him to his gym. And then the first thing the guy had him do for 6 weeks was just spot people. Learn how to recognize if they're failing, learn how to just spot, learn how to be inundated into the culture. And then after that, he came up to this guy, and the story of him was Jay, and the guy who asked him to come, his name was Tom. So Jay walked up to Tom and was like, hey, I've been just doing this all the time. What can I, I thought you were going to, help me learn how to powerlift and blah, blah, blah. And Tom said, okay, well, I needed you to learn how to spot and be and recognize everything and be a good coach first. And then he gave him sled work and as well as ab work and stuff like that. And it got to a point where Jay was doing that again for 4 to 6 weeks before he even started doing.
Sounded really wax on, wax on.
100%.
Wax on, wax offy.
And I was reading this article and I was getting bored reading it. So I'm like, gosh, where's this going? But I've had a hard on for Dave Tate now for a couple months. So I'm like, I'll trust the story. I'll keep reading. And I got to a point where Tom tells Jay, he's like, yeah, as a powerlifter, you need to build your work capacity. So pulling this sled, doing, this ab work, doing your bracing, doing all this stuff is just slowly building up your base level work capacity. And then he started getting into base strength, not even working with the bar yet, doing push-ups, doing banded good mornings, doing pull aparts, doing more ab and sled work, and building the foundation of everything before he even started with the bar. I wanted to tell this story, and it related to something you just said, and I think it was work capacity. I don't remember what it was related to. I think it meant only work capacity and building a foundation, and I think that was it.
Yeah.
God. Anyway.
I don't know if I agree entirely with the approach.
It's a very curious approach, I'll tell you that. But
sounds like the dude just got free labor for 6 weeks, and it's yeah, and then now we'll start training you.
Yeah, and the story ended fine because then this guy named Jay went back to school, became a strength conditioning coach, and he went on 12 years later. I had a 12 years later thing, and Tom was at this same nationals meet with his crew, and then up on the platform, Jay walked up and apparently broke his deadlift record that he'd taken 12 years prior. And so Tom walked back and talked to this kid Jay again, and they caught up. And Jay was saying, everything you did for me, the foundation, the work capacity, the building all this stuff from the bottom up really helped me, in life too. And so this went down a rabbit hole, and I meant to only relate it to work capacity and foundational strength. And I guarantee there's something in there that's going to relate somehow or some way that we can tie it in, but I don't remember. I wanted to tell this story, and you were talking about work capacity and foundational stuff, and I think that's the closest thing I'm
keep going.
Be able to tie it into. Otherwise, tying it out of it, I really wanted to get back into the whole competition thing, but this one, this foundational strength, this work capacity could get into, might get a little bit intense on this. Some people will hopefully don't get too offended, but might get a little offended because I have a big thing on here where, from what I've seen, people are lazy. They don't train to the necessary level. They don't do the accessories they need to do. They don't do the shit that's actually going to make them better. We can get into that a little bit before we circle back.
Absolutely. There's a caveat to that as well I'd throw in. Definitely, there's a balance. There's too lazy, and then there's just too much.
Right.
So, and I'm definitely myself have been exposed to a lot of overuse injuries, primarily upper extremity, but then dealing with an like IT issue right now, and then my hands. That's not an overuse, but it's using it incorrectly for sure. But no, it's definitely something that people are lazy sometimes. Not all the times, but there are like I'll notice for some programming too. It really differs on how a person gets programmed for, because they might not be lazy at all, but their coach or whoever's doing their programming just might not be giving them enough stuff or the right stuff. They might be telling them to just basically do like a horizontal pull and push as an accessory for that day that they're doing bench or maybe deadlifts or whatever, however they have things laid out and whatever frequency they're doing things in. But they'll just give them like the plane of movement essentially and just like do stuff. And it's like, it's a like sure if you're looking at the volume on that certain plane of movement. But it's like there's you could get more specific and maybe even be a lot more helpful, because there's some accessories out there that are pretty helpful if you can spot what the person's weakness is and then accurately apply it.
And that's a big thing too, is especially noticing those weaknesses. And I've thought now, especially now after doing some of my own programming for working with you for a year, there's another topic at the bottom of that too we can discuss later. But like recognizing your weaknesses and recognizing that accessories are going to be a primary driver in making you stronger. You can do your compounds all you want. You can, well, yes, your volume sets with your compounds is going to make you stronger by sheer load and forcing your body to handle it. But at the same time, your accessories are going to help bring up those weak points, and they're going to be the less total body fatiguing movements that are going to address those weaknesses and make you truly stronger. And I personally believe that. And I've been a victim, recently of realizing that I'm not pushing my accessories hard enough. And then just in this last almost 16 weeks with you now, I've been pushing accessories a little harder and realizing what I've been missing out on, because we've both seen the progress I've made just by sheer pushing accessory work. Now, granted, the compound training and the set rep scheme you had applied for, squat, bench, and deadlift doesn't go out the window, because that was hell in a handbasket, I'll tell you what. But at the same time, pushing those accessories, I also truly think, just from my own personal experience, also really assisted in putting my numbers where they are now.
Well, yeah, and that I've talked to a lot of people where they're just like, yeah, I primarily just do my competition lifts. I've heard that a few times, and they're like, that's what I do most of my work in, and that's what makes me stronger right now. It's like, sure, you're getting used to the technique of it, and then you're probably able to squeeze out a few pounds every training cycle or so with that. That's not unheard of, and that's something that definitely is possible. But you're gonna hit a plateau with that. You're gonna hit a plateau with not changing up stance, changing up positioning, with changing an approach, like tempos, pauses, even the bar that's being used, and changing that in regard to what you're wanting to develop, because obviously you want to have, when it comes to weight classes, you want to stay within a range, but you still want to develop a little bit of muscle, and then people will grow out of their weight classes. Like some people are just stacked and stay in their weight class because that is what's most appropriate for them, and they're pretty well developed anyways, and it's like, cool, they found like probably the one that they're going to stick with.
So I'm looking at one currently.
Yeah. But it's, when it comes to like most people, they will have to probably go through a few weight classes to get to their peak strength.
Yeah.
And they're going to start developing a lot of that kind of muscle that is going to be later then used to, develop even more strength through a lot of those accessories, and they're going to learn movement patterns that can be applied, if they think about them appropriately, to their main compounds. And you get added chance of also working around injuries with applying accessories as well, because you're not going to be able to address them appropriately with your competition lifts, especially if that competition lift's what you injured yourself with. You're going to have to change it. You're going to have to do a variation of it. You're going to have to do other variations to address whatever was damaged. So
I'm saying you've told me before, and I've heard now in a couple podcasts, read in a couple articles, you train the movement, not the muscle. Especially in powerlifting. Like, yeah, if you're, you want to bring up some muscle group, sure, add a couple extra sets for that specific muscle group. But at the same time, to get stronger in your main compound, train the movement. So if you have some instability on the bench, let's go and do a dumbbell bench to train some of that stability, and then let's add like a lot more for your back, a lot for your rear delts and your lats, just to try and keep that base. And then with the dumbbell bench, you can train some of that shoulder stability and train some of those smaller muscles that require it. And and you told me that a couple times, just train the movement, not the muscle. And when you're developing programs, you definitely, I've watched your process a little bit. You do, your horizontal push-pull, your vertical push-pull. Then you also go into like planes of movement for shoulders specifically, and you go into movements assisting your compound movement. So like, dumbbell shoulder press, your bench,
and that's definitely like that's the way I like to categorize things. Is look at something that's more knee hinge dominant over hip hinge dominant. Maybe have a ratio that's equal or favoring one over the other, depending on how the athlete's moving and everything like that. Vertical push and pull, horizontal push and pull. One thing that I've been doing a lot with those specifically is doing the 1 to 1.5. That's kind of been the ratio I like for when it comes to pressing and pulling. And so laying it out, though, sometimes it brings me back to like looking at some people's sheets, and I'm like, all right, doing this 1 to 1.5. I had all the volume for pressing and everything. Put it in my calculator. I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to have to do so much pulling. So I bring some of their pressing down a little bit.
But at the same time,
and I think that actually has been creating a little bit of a more healthier, but a little bit more strategic, a little less likely for them to be overworked if I put myself in these little parameters.
Right. Well, and I was going to go a different route too on the, I don't want to say it that way. I think your back, your entire back, and that can include your posterior chain, is far more important to every lift than people realize.
Oh, yeah.
Like for your bench, there was, what's the analogy?
Push with your back.
Yes, but like I think, it was Matt Wenning had an analogy. He's like, if you want to build a big bench, you need to have a stable base. Like you're not going to build a supercar that can go 300 mile an hour with having brakes that can stop a supercar at only 120 mile an hour. You need the base. You need to be able to basically stop it when you get to the bottom and be able to get out of it. And so same thing with your squat. You need to have a tight upper back. You need to have a strong posterior chain to keep you from falling over when you're coming out of the hole. Same like for your deadlift, it's an entire posterior chain movement anyway. And so I'm realizing truly, especially after you did the 1 to 1.5 ratio with pulling movements, it's just how much more pulling I'm doing and how much stronger my back's getting and how much more I feel that's starting to make a difference in your compound lifts.
And it's like using that in training, but I also use it kind of in like a postural sense too. Like people are always going to be focused anteriorly. So if we're just giving people like half and half, like giving you the same amount of volume for pressing as pulling, you're gonna still, if you look at some people's daily lives, they're probably gonna actually have like more kind of daily accumulation of tension or stress, strain in that more anteriorly focused position. They're gonna be opening doors. They're gonna be driving. They're gonna be looking at their computers. They're gonna be hunched forward and stuff. And you kind of want to think about that as well. It's like I'm kind of just doing this to balance out like your overall posture as well, and like keep you from developing anything outside of the gym that could lead to you having some difficulties in the gym. So, and that's also some of my accessories. They will just like be more kind of looking at like functional day-to-day stuff. So that's also, I think, a good for like not just being truly powerlifting specific, but understand that these people are living their daily lives as well, and being able to kind of apply things that might complement that a little bit, or be able to work around it, or just promote longevity.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess we can circle back around a little bit. So I'll reiterate: do your damn accessories. Do your damn accessories. They're, in my opinion, sometimes more fun. Now, they get to a point where they're not, and that's where I'm going to circle back to nobody wants to do the crap work, Nobody wants to pull the sled to help their knees. Nobody wants to do their bracing. Nobody wants to do carries. Nobody wants to do their full warm up because it takes too much time. Nobody wants to do certain exercises because it hurts too much or they feel unstable. Like you gave me barbell Bulgarian split squats. Those first time I did them fucking sucked.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's that really crap work when you break it down on a musculature level, especially when you have a barbell on your back instead of holding two dumbbells and you're closer to the ground. You really have to focus on your balance.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure that you're upright, that your core is braced, you're like really screwed into the floor with your foot, and that everything on that leg that you're standing on, from your hips to your stability to your quads to your bracing and everything else, has to be on point. And so people need to do more of the crap work.
Mm-hmm.
The stuff that seems silly or the stuff that sucks is often going to be what's actually going to help.
Yeah. Well, sometimes if
yes,
it's someone randomly just programs you burpees, they're just
I'll say to an intelligent degree.
yeah. But no, I even myself dealing with like my IT band issue, which I'm like now to the point I'm just convinced that it's like an IT band syndrome, which is what primarily endurance athletes get, but a lot of symptoms are kind of correlating strongly between that and what I'm dealing with right now. So I'm having to just do stuff for that I don't like doing at all. Like those isometric holds suck.
Mm-hmm.
They suck dick. God, that's like doing them at first too. That hurt. It hurt the whole fucking just knee joint for me. And as I get warmed up into them, that pain just dissipates. And so I'm just like, okay, just stay up with it. Hopefully, when you start it again next time, or you do the same amount, whatever, apply it, and that pain just starts at a lesser amount each time, which I have been noticing. So that's good. And then, yeah, just doing some of the stretches for it and stuff that I truly don't like doing because it does take up quite a bit of time, and I sometimes see myself in here for a little bit. But it's you gotta if you want to push your body, you want to see how far it can go. You gotta also treat it right. So and kind of doing all the work that I've been doing, I'm learning that it's like I gotta really just I think pay more and like I want to hyper focus on training. I want to hyper focus on training and all that stuff. I'm like, okay, I should probably start hyper focusing on recovery too.
Yeah. I was saying that I heard that just the other day too in another podcast where they were talking about when you're young, the whole like you're young and dumb, you can recover from freaking anything. You can do whatever you want as long as you don't catastrophically injure yourself. Chances are you're going to be fine. Mm-hmm. Versus as you're getting older, understanding the importance of a full warm up. Otherwise, you're going to be tight and you're going to hurt. Mm-hmm. You need to understand that like when you're young, if you instill that principle, you're going to have far easier time the older you get.
Yeah.
Because then that's already there. Your body is already used to it. Plus, you might extend the time you can go without having to do a full 20-minute warm up. Mm-hmm. Maybe even in your 30s, you can still afford to do a 15-minute warm up because you made sure you focused on it 15 years prior, all the way through. And I'm just pulling random years and ages out of my head that I don't have any scientific background to back up by any means. But at the same time, like, if you're doing the shit now because you know it's going to help and you want to, it's going to make it a whole lot easier when you have to.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, definitely. Like, again, that just promotes longevity with that. Mm-hmm. And heck, even I've been noticing too when it goes to like going to like even the boxing classes that they have, like you notice like what they ran for their warm-ups and everything prior, and it's just like kind of very basic stuff. Mm-hmm. And like it's part of me is just wanting to like take some of the coaches to the side, and I'm like, nope, that's not my place. But just be like, hey, I think some of the like, yeah, sure, it's getting those joints like moving a little bit that you're doing it for, but it's like you're not preparing them for impact, you're not preparing them for power output, you're kind of just honestly just having them do very basic stuff that I think was pulled from a PE class probably. So it's doing the right warm-ups is definitely very, very important, And sometimes people can, I'm kind of trailing off, but where I was getting to is doing the wrong warm-ups.
Yeah, and on that same note too, there's a perfect amount of warm up for everybody. You
Yeah.
can over warm up and you can under warm up.
Yeah.
I've had some people like talking to me about it, like, oh yeah, my second set felt better than my first, or my third set felt better than my first. And I look at them like, well, how'd you warm up? Like, yeah. And now I know there's also other variables that come into play here, but at the same time,
sometimes when it comes to the working sets, people might like, depends on how they warm up with that specific movement in itself. Yeah, maybe they need to take maybe one more jump of a warm up, getting up to their top set because it's just too heavy. They haven't gotten to that point of kind of recruitment yet for it, and they do that heavy set. It's like, oh, that was rough, but now I'm like, my second set was good. It's like, well, yeah, you just kind of recruited everything that you need for that second set, and that's going to be residual, and that's going to carry over. And so, because that's why, and whenever you do a heavy set and you do a lighter set following it, or even something slightly lighter, less volume, whatever, it feels easier because it's like you're prepared for the most, and you're not doing the most now. Yeah. So getting close to preparing for the most is the most that you can do, but it's also like sometimes it's just going to feel a little off. Getting used to pretending that lightweight is heavier though, like going with that approach, not treating it like lightweight, treating that bar, treating that 135, that 225, that even 315, depending on where you sit at for your overall 1 rep max, treating that like it's your 1 rep max will help kind of shrink that gap.
Yeah. And I won't lie, I blacked out for about 10 seconds there, so you might have talked about it already. Treating every warm-up as if it's your top set. And doing your setup, your walkout, every part of it as if it is what you ultimately need to do is going to set you up better for success.
Absolutely. And it's, it kind of just goes to discipline, goes into repetitive technique and approach. The more you do things, the better you get at them. That's just facts. So it's not the more that you do just that one heavy set, but it's the more you treat every other set as if it's heavy, you'll really see progress, because you can only do that heavy set so many times before you start seeing diminishing returns.
Yeah.
So you got to take every opportunity that you can get to actually really, truly work on it. So
yeah, I was saying, I think that can pull us back up to a couple topics up here. I got one, like, back to what I said we were going to touch on earlier about competing, and then we can get into like why you compete and why you powerlift. But first, like competing, like, and we touched on it earlier about being better than yourself, and that powerlifting is, there's teams, but it's pretty much an individual sport. And now I'm not saying like, only worry about yourself, be competitive, folk, because that competition provides a driver. Also, it can raise your hormone levels to like make you want to do better, drive your focus to be better. But at the same time, going into competition, you also have to want to be better than yourself. And you have to focus on you and focus on doing the best that you can, more so than focusing on what other people are doing and realize, oh, I have to beat them. And I'm starting to come into that too, where it's been, starting to know more people in the sport and understand who they are, understand how they're lifting, and trying not to focus on them and focusing more on myself and bettering myself instead. And now, like I said, again, some of those people in my same weight class, they might be close to me, a little bit better than me, but then it provides that driver to be better. But at the same time, at the base of it is beating myself.
Yeah. And yeah, it's an individual sport. So that is the gist of it. Yeah, it's nice to have people around that share similar interests, that you kind of train either under a certain individual or certain individuals under one name or within the same gym. There is just that kind of, you build that interpersonal relationship with those people. And that kind of just helps out, because no one likes going to a meet and just being by themselves. Like that's always awkward, unless you're really good at talking to people, which, I mean, my boyish charm, that's perfectly fine. Heck, that's But a lot of my meets at the beginning, I just kind of trotted in on my own, and next thing I walk out with like 3 new friends.
Yeah.
So that's it really just depends on your personality too, and how well you can yourself be motivated, how well you yourself can also select attempts, and so on and so forth. Because sometimes having a team or something like that can help you go in that regard with having someone be your handler and have that little safety net, I would say. So,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, yeah, it's just you moving that weight out there,
Yeah.
and that's no one else is gonna truly help you move that weight besides you and your own discipline within the training that you were given or that you plan for yourself.
Yeah. And that really well actually leads into like, why do you compete in powerlifting? Why? And my own parents and my fiance doesn't exactly understand it either. They just support that I'm doing because it's something that I'm enjoying. But why do you put 550 pounds on your back and sit down and stand back up? Like, what? How crazy do you have to be to do that? And why? Why do you do it?
Oh God, I there's I would just say mental illness.
This is really funny too because I'm sitting here. I have no idea either. I was listening to another podcast from Dave Tate with Mike Israel, and they were both saying like what drives them to do this and to constantly push more weight and be better for so long, especially like some people like David been in the sport since the 80s, and people are like, how do you keep pushing? How do you keep doing it? And he literally said in the podcast, he's like, I don't think I could explain it if I tried.
Yeah.
Especially for him. Now, he's been in this sport far longer than either of us have. But it's curious to see because I'm sitting here thinking and watching you kind of mull it over in your head. I don't know either.
Yeah. Well, I would say like it probably gets to a certain point if you've been in it for so long that you kind of either you forget why you started in the first place, which would be kind of like almost you like lose interest, or if you're still in the sport, you're still heavily involved. Everything still is very appealing to you, and there's still that drive. But just like I really don't know why. It's like I don't know. Maybe that's just that I don't know why. Just kind of sounds like that's a purpose type of thing. Like you don't sometimes know what your own purpose is until you do it, and then you're just like, oh, this just feels right, and then that's as far as you can go into it because when something just feels right, it does. You just can't like truly describe it past that point. Now the want to do more, that I would say that would be like my personal kind of drive, just the want to do more and be that want to do more with the people that I train or want to do more myself, and that will always be a driver, but that will also in its own way kind of have a negative appeal to it. If I want to always do more, but I come across these injuries where I come across any of these things that like a plateau or anything that takes me back a step, that want to do more almost kind of it has that almost like clashing effect, and I'm like, well fuck, I'm not doing more and I want to do more but I'm just not, and then that can lead to just giving up. So I think there is a point where letting go of that always wanting to do more, like pushing yourself continually, not having a certain goal in mind or anything, but just wanting to kind of progress is still healthy, but just being okay with how the process is not going to always be more.
Yeah, and that's another big thing too is when you stall, you have to understand you have to enjoy the process to keep going.
Yeah.
Because I was talking to someone the other day, they spent 6 months like grinding out their bench just to only put 6 pounds on it. However, they were fucking elated to have 6 pounds put on their bench in 6 months.
Oh yeah.
And so you really have to, when you get to that point, you have to truly enjoy the process and truly enjoy your training. Otherwise, when you stall, it's not going to be fun. And I think I mentioned the last podcast too about Dave Hoff, the like multiply all-time world record holder. In 2018, he set the multiplier world record at like 3,018 pounds total. And then back just, I think, 22 or 23, he beat his own record of 3,018 with 3,024. It took 4 years to put 6 pounds on his total.
Oh yeah, especially if you get to that point.
Yeah,
Jesus Christ.
by all means. But
I think, what was it, like Joe Sullivan broke his own world record just by like a chip or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like I don't know how long of a training period for that.
That one I think he
It was
changed his entire training
It
because
was-
he did it at the American Pro and then just so that was October
Mhm.
and then a meet just a couple months ago. So it might have only been 6 months, but that's 6 months to chip it by like what, half a kilo? Kilo?
I don't even think that. I don't even think it was a kilo. I think it was like literally just a quarter of a kilo.
Yeah.
So just enough to like, this is technically more weight. This is so that's insane. But yeah, sometimes when you get up to those high weights, you're almost getting to this point where like progression's just curving like this, and you're just working on almost maintaining while trying to just get that tiny progression here and there.
It's like so when we first start, it's exponential because your body doesn't know what the fuck you're doing to it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
So it's like, oh, we have to adapt right now, otherwise this is gonna hurt.
Oh yeah, everyone gains strength immediately when they start training. Even if they're just like an average Joe that comes into the gym and is like, I'm going to just pick this up and put it back down for repetitions. And it's like, you're going to get stronger, especially in those first initial months. Like, you are going to get substantially stronger from your starting point. Like, and you won't see a whole lot of aesthetics change or anything, but you'll get substantially stronger because all those neuromuscular connections just freaking go off and they develop. And then from there, it's just like, you could have trash technique too, and those things are just going to, you're just going to get stronger regardless.
Yeah.
But then it gets to the point where technique becomes a limiting factor. Amount of muscle that you do have on your frame becomes a limiting factor, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So,
staying on this note, what was your? Because you started even later than I did in the sport. Because when did you start? When you were
21.
Oh, never mind. You didn't. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought for some reason only a few years ago.
Nope. I think I started when I was 21 ish, in that range. I did like one competition with knee reps, and that was weird. I remember like it was my first competition. I don't know what the hell I was doing. I was like, oh, this looks fun. I'm gonna sign up for this. And then sitting on the chair for squats, and like I'm not paying attention to who they're calling out for attempts. So they like said I'm in the hole, and I'm just like sitting there, and I'm like, wait, go up to 70. What does in hole mean? You're up next. Oh shit! And I'm just like wrapping my knees, like frantically. And they're like, Matthew Smith, you're up. And I'm like, still wrapping my knees. And then I get them on, waddle up. I have 10 seconds left, and they're like, walk it out, squat it, come back. And I think I failed that lift just for being rushed, and that was like a second attempt. And I came back, got my third because I was like, okay, now I know what those mean.
Yeah.
So,
I guess on that, what was your like indoctrination to the sport then? What did you see on social media, in the gym, another person? What did you see that started you on this crazy freaking journey?
I just saw some kid that was like literally the same size as me, just deadlifting like 500-600 pounds for reps. And I was like,
oh, okay.
Oh, cool, that seems fun. And it was like all I was doing was like running a bunch, training, running, overtraining probably a little bit, just getting in the habit. I was like, I'm going to be this healthy person, and then I'm just fucking abusing my body.
Yeah.
And so I think that's every primarily male's approach to doing it. Is like, I'm gonna be this different animal or whatever. It's like, I've been listening to a whole lot of David Goggins and Andrew Tate, and I'm just ready. Fucking no, it started off like pretty unnecessarily intense, but obviously, like you said earlier, I was quick to recover. Injuries weren't prevalent really at all for a lot of things I did. And like, I could run, lifts, and do whatever with not having a whole lot of negative feedback from it.
Mm-hmm.
But then it got to a point where I was starting to plateau. Because I'm doing so much endurance stuff. I'm trying to do all this strength stuff. So I was like a pick or choose. So I ran like a half marathon before I did this meet. Like, I ran it like a couple months prior and then switched to powerlifting. And then did that, and then I was like, okay, I think I want to do this over running. So I stopped kind of running entirely. Still did some like drills because it was like a slow little kind of get rid of thing. I'd still run trails. I'd still do hill sprints and stuff. And then as I got more in tune with like programming for myself, I was putting a lot more accessories in, and then I was having to kind of omit the cardio just because I just didn't have time, or that was turning those into like almost 2.5-3 hour sessions, which I didn't want to do to myself. And so, yeah. I kind of just began favoring it, liked it, kind of gave me like, I don't know, I was starting to get a little muscular from it. Skinny kid, you start seeing muscle getting developed. You're like, cool.
Yeah.
So,
I remember mine because I was I didn't even really expect it. I was, before this moment, I was at the rec. I was still in college, and I was starting to deadlift because I heard that you should deadlift. It's good for you, or it's one of the better exercises if you know how to do it. So I watched a bunch of videos, started deadlifting, started squatting instead of leg pressing, and I'd always been benching. But I thought I was some hot shit when I was in the rec, especially with their bumper plates too, because I had like 335 on the bar.
That's thick.
Yeah, 335 on the bar, deadlifting it for like 2 or 3. I thought it was fucking man. And then I did that for a while and just, I don't know, let my ego take over, never really paid attention to anybody else. And then COVID hit, stopped lifting. And then I found this gym, and there was one day, I'd only been here for 2-3 months at this point. I'd just been lifting. I had set a goal for myself to a couple personal goals, but those were personal goals, and I never really wanted to powerlift. Hadn't really thought about it until I was in here one day going for a squat PR, which was 385 for 3. Watching the video back, it's always funny to me because I didn't hit depth at all, and it was the most atrocious squat I've ever seen in my life now. But in the other rack adjacent from me, there was someone here at this gym front squatting 405 for 2. And I will never forget that day. And he's one of my friends in the gym now. I'll never forget that day because I saw that and I'm like, damn, I want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started talking to him more, talking about like what he does, and he said he was used to be in football and then didn't really want to do that anymore. And he's been powerlifting for a while. I kind of started.
Who? Oh, only done 405 for 1.
Yeah, he was doing a 405 front squat double, and from then on, I started like watching videos and learning what powerlifting was, and I'd still just trying to get stronger, still focusing on my personal goals. And when I signed up for the first meet, someone here just told me like, you're pretty strong, you should do that. I'm like, nah, I feel like I'm not strong enough to be doing that.
Just imagine the front squat's the only squat exposure you go and you just front squat. You're like, what the hell is this kid doing?
I always thought I just wasn't strong enough. Like it wasn't going to be worth my while. At this point, I was squatting and pulling over 500 pounds. Yeah. My bench was a touch and go. My bench was in the high 2s, and someone's like, you should just try it. Just have fun with it. Mm-hmm. And that's when I contacted you last May. Mm-hmm. And here we are with my fucking biennial plan that I want to hit. And the only thing that matters to me in this life anymore is this gym and training. So,
and your fiance.
Well, that's a given. I wear a ring. But yeah, no, I can always look back on that. It was February. I could probably pull it up on my phone too on my Instagram. There's still a video of it. It's like February 12th or 16th, 18th, whatever the fuck it was.
Yeah.
Back in 2021. So a little over 2 years ago now. And watched someone front squatting 405 for 2. And then here we are. That was my big one.
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely just being exposed to strength, especially in a personal point, because then like if you're watching a lot of videos on Instagram, kind of gets a little, you become desensitized to it, and it's like, yeah, it could be a motivation, but then you see all these people doing it, and you're not at that point. It can be demotivating almost. So like seeing it in person and just like you've never heard of this person before, and you see that this average dude, what you would consider or slightly above average, doing some feat of strength, and then that I think is a little bit more motivating. I personally, when it comes to like the big names though, like depending on like who they are as a person and everything, that also kind of impacts a little bit. But I don't know.
Yeah, and I got more in here about social media and stuff like that. But yeah, social media skews so much of that because I mean, I won't lie, Matt. If I saw you on Instagram right now and I saw your video of the stockyard, watch you pull 622. Now, granted, you look strong, you're lean, sure, but like if I didn't know you, I'd be like,
yeah,
what the fuck?
Yeah, and that's I don't know. So
I mean,
someday I'll get to 700 pounds. How crazy would it be if I'm just like do my first boxing match and then next a month down the road pull 700 pounds? Wonder if that's possible.
That's gonna be tough because you're going straight back into an endurance sport.
Yeah,
and a lifting sport back to back.
That's actually makes me because I was training with this like one like older guy too who's running me through the shadow boxing, It was funny because he was one thing they kept saying to me was like, "You have the power. You have lots of power, actually, and you're starting at a point that people try to get to. So but with what you need to work on, you need to regress." And I was like, "Okay." So I have to do that. Basically, what I was being told is like I have to get not smaller per se, but I have to like how obviously these people don't know a whole lot probably when it comes to like they probably know training specifically for boxing, the little things like do as much endurance work as you can and you'll be better at the sport and all this stuff. And it's like, yeah, I feel like there's probably a caveat to that, and I feel like there's a certain amount.
So you have to get faster. You're strong enough, you have the power, you just have to get faster.
Yeah, well, it's faster and just more for me personally. It's balance. So the footwork's probably that foundation in itself is probably the first thing that will help out quite a bit, and then
wax on, wax off. Baby.
Yeah, wax on, wax off, and then apparently keeping my elbows in. I have like a tail sign of loading my jab with an elbow that flares a little bit out. So that's those like small little things, but like when I hit the bag, especially when it comes to like I've been doing so much with my left due to my right hand going through its thing. It's like, dude, my left jab is actually stupid. Like if I can get it right, if I can feel that lat too, once I load, come around, hit, it's like it feels like I could just knock a dude out right there and right then. But it's at that point too, it's like I can't rely on that. And at the same point too, then I have to like, okay, I'm gonna have to look at my training itself because I'm not part of me. It's like I would love to run drills and all these things with these coaches and stuff, but part of me does not want them to take like control of the aerobic aspect, like that training and everything with what I'm trying to do here still. So I'm just like, I'm definitely gonna have a sit down and like make a few like little basically plots of how to go about this, what might be more appropriate, what maybe what I should consider for recovery in these, what would be good off days, which would be good on days, what could I maybe even do on those off days as an active recovery, and then dieting and stuff with that.
I would say I stopped simply because
well, if you want to favor something, yeah, you're going to choose one over the other.
Yeah, and that's primarily what I ended up doing is just favoring because I couldn't recover from the boxing to go into my powerlifting. Now, there's something to be said about could I not be, 230 pounds and probably have a better output at like 200, 210? Probably. But I had to really think to myself, would I rather favor powerlifting, put everything I have into that right now because that's the primary goals I have for myself for the next 2 years, or do I want to enjoy this as a hobby and try and get better at this and maybe have that extra endurance aspect and that extra stuff like that? And so I ultimately chose powerlifting. So
and that's and for me, like I would still like to keep that part of my training regimen. I'd still like to try to go and be like that boxer that can squat close to 5 or maybe even still maintain a low 5 squat while doing that. Especially when it comes to like throwing like a good punch and everything, like you do need some fucking leg development. You do need to have like the drive to be able to force that power from that back leg through that hip to that rotation and get that person.
So I actually just saw on TikTok the other day a dude who did powerlifting meet, a bodybuilding show, and ran either a full or a half Ironman all within a couple months.
That's more intense than what I'm thinking. So damn, holy shit! I wonder how he did in all those.
I have no idea.
Last place and everything.
No, he still did them. Let's be real.
He did them. He just didn't do them well.
Yeah, I was saying that can lead us into like social media and skewing everything you see, as well as so many people now are concerned with what they're gonna post on social media. And what did I write? It's down there somewhere. So people are so concerned about what they're gonna post on social media and that they look at posting it and getting approval more than they focus on their training.
Oh yeah.
They take way too much time between sets to set up the camera to record what they're going to do. Or they want to make sure this set is perfect, and so they don't push as hard because maybe it won't look good. And their training takes a hit in doing so.
My big thing is Instagram has seen a percent of all my training videos. So that's my big thing. The training videos should be used for yourself, for your coach primarily. And not gonna lie, like you probably, if you have some social media presence, posting daily stuff, yeah, sure, that's keeping like followers kind of in tune with where you're at.
Yeah.
Keeping the engagement up, sure, especially if you have lots of like sponsorships or anything. If you're just some influencer that has 10% off codes, though, you can kind of, it's wishful thinking.
If you're like, this is going to sound mean too, I don't know how else, but like a wannabe influencer, like you want to get to that level.
Yeah,
you do have to like really put forth the effort, but like recording every training session, recording so much of it that your training itself is just bad because you're not getting anything out of it.
Yeah, and it's, if you focus, like some people are just focused on aesthetics, and if you're focused on the aesthetics and how you look while you're training and a good lift will look good. If your aesthetics like, oh, I want this to look good technique-wise because I want it to progress as much, but it's like, no, I want it to look good because this angle makes my fucking ass look great. Like there's a few things, and that's why I'll never get into like when I post a shirtless picture, shit, I lose followers. I'm like, oh, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense. But fair enough. Got it.
I'll say, I used to post on my lifting Instagram all the time because I was too cheap to buy the freaking iCloud storage.
Yeah.
So I would make space on my phone and be like, all right, Instagram, have it. I don't want it anymore. I'll just delete it off my phone and it'll be on Instagram. And now I bought the iCloud, the actual, stop being cheap because it was only 99 cents a month and I need to stop being a little bitch.
Yeah.
I started just saving it on my phone. Instagram sees, I don't know, 10% of the videos I take of myself. And half the time, my biggest issue is I'll go back and watch every single freaking video 20 times over to make sure that this looked good, or, oh, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was in the moment, or this, that, and the other thing, and I overanalyze, and then at least Instagram doesn't have to see my overanalyzing.
Yeah, and then I also kind of just like relying on approval from others, that will be a very depressing source of reassurance.
Yeah. So man's biggest downfall will be ego.
Yep.
Every time.
So it's honestly for me, keeping being, especially with lately, I've just been kind of, I don't repost my athlete stuff if they tag me in it and stuff. I will like it and everything like that. I don't post anything of my own. Like I'm kind of like wanting to maintain a social media distance.
Yeah.
And
which is funny because as much as I would like you to start your online coaching presence, so you can actually
fucking you're telling an extreme introvert to do a non-extreme introvert thing, and part of me likes there will be an aspect, there will be a balance that gets developed, but right now it's sometimes either one or the other, and I just need to do a balance of it. And yeah, no, the online coaching presence, that should be probably increased a little bit, but some part of me finds this little bit of appeal in being like that coach that like maybe no one really knows about or anything. They just find them randomly, and the next thing they're like, holy shit, this actually is really working. Or like, this guy knows a lot, and stuff like that. Like
next thing you know, their team rolls up to a meet and fucks your shit up.
Yeah, and so being that guy that's like hiding in the woodworks, kind of, I don't know.
I get what you're saying. I like the whole idea of like
traction to elusiveness.
Yeah, going dark and then showing up months later, just absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just gonna come next
meet.
I'm gonna show up in tattoos, like, massive.
Disappear for 6 months, showing up mentally like unit and physically even more so, and like you go through this change. People ask like, "What the fuck did you do?" And you're like,
well, trauma. Finger down.
It's one of those things you don't really understand until you have to do it yourself.
Oh yeah, no, and people always like, even if they have like a rough day, right, like, oh, I'm gonna go dark, where it's like people need to know my process or anything like that, and they're just saying it kind of just, they're saying it on social media.
Oh, they're saying it on social media just to get traction with it.
That's where it's like, no, you're not fucking doing shit. No, you're not doing shit at all. You're just wanting people to think you're just badass, and you're fucking not a badass in any way, shape, or form. You haven't done a single badass thing probably in your fucking life. So I swear to God, if you say you're him in your fucking video, I'm gonna find where you live and punch you in the face while you're sleeping.
I would say
and then wait till you wake up and punch you again.
Yeah. Whenever you posted videos on Instagram back a couple of years ago, you'd always use some random ass fact or some paragraph, like the platypus one was the funniest fucking one.
Yeah. No, it's like I do not care about motivating people through my captions. I was like, if they want to get motivated by me, talk to me in person.
I would say I already
learn the genuine me, and then that might motivate you. Don't rely on a fraction of what you see of that person to motivate you.
Yeah. I'll say I keep forgetting to post my favorite quote, in the cover photo for some random video is going to be a duck. And that one quote I told you a couple weeks ago that I saw either on somewhere, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, TikTok, I don't know. It was a quote. It's a real quote too.
Oh yes, to the dog.
How fleeting are all human compassions compared to the continuity of ducks.
Fucking, I'm gonna get a duck at some point in my life. That's probably gonna be the most loyal animal I have.
Oh
I
man.
have a flock of them. That's what a group of ducks is called, right? It's a flock, or any bird.
Well, I mean, crows are called a murder. So.
Huh.
You didn't know that?
Yeah, I knew that, but that's why I was
yeah.
like thinking, like, I still think it's like a flock of ducks, or maybe like a gang of ducks.
That'd be pretty sick.
Yeah, a gang of ducks. Fucking
Yeah.
just say I'll have bandanas on.
I guess off the social media, we can go away from that and back to. I want to circle really back around and kind of finish out like this powerlifting as a sport and get into a little bit more on the training side of things. We'll check the time after we do all this powerlifting as a sport. Because we started at 11. Oh Lord, we're already over an hour. Fantabulous.
Mhm.
Oh, anyway, we might do the training thing at a wrong time. I don't know.
By all means, yeah.
It depends. Anyway, like circling back around to like training to the necessary level and like the off season, or the off season as it's called, like that's where you grow. That's where you get stronger, and that's where that hypertrophy block that fucking sucks, that sets of 405 on squat that you're doing for 8 is what's actually going to do something for you.
Doing the stuff that you really don't like to do, working on, looking back at what you fucked up on all throughout the strength and the peak, and then go back to basically step 1, doing all the things that you don't want to do, working on the things, working on the development of things, and then hoping that whatever momentum you basically, all that potential energy that you develop in that phase is then exerted throughout the strength, and then later into the peak, and then done appropriately, all of it dissipates again, and then you develop all that again.
Everyone loves their singles, doubles, triples, but that's because you're showing off your strength, but you can't show off strength you don't build. And that's where that volume block comes in. That's where those sets of 8, those garbage fucking sets that you don't want to do because you can't fucking breathe. And like I remember, it got to a point too. Like, now, luckily, I'd been working with you long enough. My work capacity was decent enough. I could do my squat sets up to 8 without feeling like my lungs were exploding. But at the same time, that still fucking hurts.
Oh yeah.
But without doing that, I couldn't be doing the things I'm doing currently.
Absolutely. If you're not maintaining your brace throughout those sets, or if you're doing some odd positioning thing, you're also gonna fucking feel it too later on the day. You're going to compromise maybe your own. You're going to compromise how you feel that next day and how the next training session is going to be, and you're going to have big impacts. And that's why that kind of discipline, that technique work, and everything that's really pushed a lot during those accumulation blocks is to get that trained in you. And sometimes you have to get it to a point where it's like you want to give up, but you have to keep going with that, and not to take that into a point where it's like you have to give every single training session your all, because that would mean, in regards to this aspect, your all is RPE 10s across the board. And that's not what I'm saying. Giving it just going after it and putting forth effort and staying within the effort range that's prescribed, that's what you're wanting to do. And even within effort range, like, you'll get to that point where it's like, fuck, I want to kind of give up on this. But you do have more. You mechanically have more in you, and your form hasn't broke yet or anything like that, but you still want to give up, you're still capable of doing more. And that's also kind of the thing that accumulation block, I think, does a real good job of teaching people, is they do have more, or they do have a better capacity than what they truly think they do.
That could really lead us back around to the whole thing that people are lazy. They don't want to push that accumulation, because doing those heavyweight, I mean, it's relatively, it's absolutely heavy, but at the same time, it's still, if it's programmed well, it's a weight that they absolutely can do for those sets of 8. And people are too lazy to really push through that initial, like, holy fuck, this hurts. And, or like, oh man, I already can't breathe. It's like rep 4, I gotta get to 8, where they stop because they basically don't want to go. They don't have the mental strength to continue pushing past when maybe they could have done fucking 10. They only had to do 8. Maybe they could have done 12. They only had to do 10.
Oh yeah, and I'll catch myself sometimes. I'll wind up doing 7. Sometimes not on purpose. Sometimes I just suck at counting. And I'll look at the video and I'm just like, oh, fuck me, god damn it. But I'll do that, and like sometimes I'll cut myself a little short on purpose, and then I'll give myself a moment to think about it. I'm like, fuck, I really just cut myself short on that. And it's like, yeah, those moments, they get everybody. And it's just like being able to realize that moment, go past that moment. Like, I'm having that moment right now where I do want to give up. Acknowledging that, hey, take it, like, if you say you were using squatting a lot as an example. So you get back up from, like, your whatever amount of rep that you're on currently, and you want to give up at that point. Give yourself a brief moment. Realize it. Go back down, do it again.
Yeah. I was saying, I guess, you know what, we can keep going however long this will be. We'll get into that training, because that can really lead us in, because that's, only noon. We've been going about an hour, probably an hour and a half. I wouldn't have too much of an issue.
Talking about volume, one of my clients just messaged me, top set isn't going to increase any more in reps, is it?
You already put him at 5?
Yeah, he's already at 5.
That goes into, like, that mental capacity that, and we talked about it the first time that I talked to you on this podcast, was mindfulness. And, like, mindfulness with lifting and listening to your body and understanding where you're at. And, like, honestly, I felt that mindfulness before. I've done sets where I black out in the middle of it, and only last night did I truly look up, like, how to be mindful and how to attempt to enter the state. And before that, like, I'd done it without knowing it, but now I kind of understand a little more how to do it, and it's one of those things where it's another one of those things where I don't want to share. I want people to understand. Geez, you cannot attempt to explain, like, how to enter the void, how to be mindful, how to be. You get set up underneath a squat and then you don't remember anything until you rack it. That's, to me, almost impossible to.
Or it's dementia. It's one of the two.
Or I'm just fucking.
Or
crazy.
Alzheimer's, I should say. That would be. You have
but
amyloid plaque developing in your brain. That's what's going on. So,
but like that mindfulness and being able to force yourself through those extra reps, even if it hurts, and having the mental strength to put yourself there.
Yeah.
We're towards the bottom, bro. Mindfulness and lifting.
Yeah.
There you go.
Listen to your body. So yeah, the mindfulness. Like, when it comes to lifting, it's a good way of, like meditation in itself is basically just being able to take your focus, not forcefully take your focus away from one certain thing, but allow your focus just to be there and not allow anything to grab a hold of it. And when it comes to a training aspect, you're focusing primarily on one thing, and you're tuning though out still a bunch of other external factors, so you can still apply that mindfulness towards doing a certain thing, and then also that can still be within that realm of what mindfulness is. Saying the void, or you're blacking out and stuff, that just sounds more intense.
Yeah, it's an intense way of putting mindfulness, but like at the same time, if you're that mindful, only focused on what you're doing, like I'll look back and I'll think about it and be like, yeah, I mean, I don't remember it, but I do. It's one of those things where you're so hyper focused on exactly what you're doing, nothing else in the world matters. And so entering that void is just, to me, it's after I get done, I'm like, wow, that's kind of fuzzy. But at the same time, I was so hyper focused on what I was doing, I knew exactly what I was doing. It's very strange to explain, unless you've felt it.
Yeah, and just having that one, being in tune with basically every, depending on how you are, there's multiple ways I feel like you can be mindful about it. You can be mindful about something that you're struggling with when it comes to the lift. You can be mindful about exerting rotation and say applying an external rotation to your feet or to your hands while doing squat or bench. You can be mindful about a brace. You can be mindful about the descent. You can be mindful about the ascent. There's all these aspects that you can truly be mindful towards if something is something that that you struggle in. If you are mindful about that, cool. If that's what you're putting your attention towards, cool. It's very vague on what you can use it for, but just allowing, you're not thinking about everything else. You're not thinking about what could be, what isn't. You're not thinking about how many more basically reps you have to do. You just think about that one single rep at that moment, and keeping yourself basically in that moment is the big component of it.
Yeah, and that's also the other thing that I was really learning when I was trying to understand more about mindfulness, and it's not meditating, but kind of meditating, is that you have to try to train your brain to stay present for longer periods of time. Because your
Mm-hmm.
brain is going to wander no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try.
Oh yeah,
It
especially
is
if you
very
try.
difficult to just no
Especially if you
kidding.
try. If you try to change your focus, it's gonna change. That's what's psychology nowadays. If you try to make yourself not think something, you're gonna fucking think it.
Yeah.
That's how your brain works. Your brain's not. You're not in full control of your brain. No matter if some people are like you are, or you're in control of everything, or you have control over it. No, you're physically you are incapable of controlling every component of your brain when it comes to thinking and all that stuff. It's just like you can focus and you can train your focus to be a little bit more better, but it's never going to be 100%. So that is one aspect that I think some people need to realize and learn to be content, okay with.
Yeah.
So
I was saying we can move into like that training portion down there.
Yeah.
And I want to start it with, I think that last thing down there is like with training and with learning, take some time to understand your body. Take some time to try and experiment, Google, read articles, read actual published studies, watch YouTube videos. That's what I did, and try and program for yourself a 6-week block.
No.
Try and understand your body, understand training, how it's supposed to be structured. And chances are you're going to learn a whole lot more about yourself in those 6 weeks than you would have in years of lifting. Not to mention your coach will probably enjoy it, because then you and I, we get to sit in the office up here when a training day doesn't go well for me and actually have intelligent conversations about what happened, how we move forward from it.
Intelligent conversations were just cavemen grunting.
But like, and that's the other thing. Like, if you take that time to truly understand your body, understand training, not even understand programming, but like understanding how you react to certain aspects of training, your coach will probably thank you, because then you have that opportunity to learn and understand more about yourself, because your coach is not you. Your coach can only see your training, but they don't understand how you're feeling or what's going to work best until you do.
And then you learn how to basically you learn yourself to be more receptive, because you begin to understand things more that maybe your coach is saying that you just didn't understand prior, or something that you're able to tell them more accurately how you feel. You learn your RPE better, which is why I've been thinking of trying just a completely new approach. And I see that RPE is part of this, so I don't know if I should go into that right now.
Yeah, you can absolutely go into that. Just basically what RPE is, and maybe training to RPE with a reference point for weight, but trying to feel out the weight more than
I think
giving you a prescribed range.
And the reference point's always going to change, so RPE is always going to be ever changing for people. That's going to be one fact. I myself, when it comes to RPE, a lot of the scales you'll notice the scales are a little kind of weird sometimes. Like they'll have like obviously 10's going to be that's it. That's all you got. 9's 1, 9.5's 1.5, 8's 2, 8.5's 2.5, so on and so forth. Until you get to I think it's like 4 to 6.
4 to 6 doesn't matter.
5 to 6. It's like it in the scales. It's like 5 to 6. It's like you have 6 to, some of them will say 6 to 7 repetitions left. Because people are assuming it's like, oh, whatever I have 7, that means I have 3 reps left. I'm taking this all subtracted by 10 until you actually get to like that 5 to 6 range, and then somehow you're adding one more.
I would say to me, RP anywhere from 1 to 5, almost 5.5, is just I could do this all day. And like, yeah, there comes to a point where maybe it is you recognize like, oh, this is
I wouldn't say you can do that all day. I would say a 1 is an all day thing.
1's an all day, but like even for me, an RP 4 isn't an all day thing, but like half a day thing.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's at least how I think of it, because like,
and that's when it comes to a true thing, because then your RP4 might not actually be your RP4, it might be your RP2.
There.
So there's that weird point where it's like, even for me, like when it comes to a 10, I do use a 10 as an absolute, but then sometimes for 9's, I'll say 1 to 2. Some people would be like, oh, I might have 2 reps left in it, and next they do 2 reps of what was supposed to be a 9, and it's like, cool, that was actually probably an 8. Like there's that little like thing that's like people's RPEs are not true. It's not all black and white for each one. There is a range in which they can hit that they would think about that number and try to achieve it, but then they actually wind up getting one more rep of it.
And like you said, RPs can change. Like my bench this last week compared to the week prior I did 315 for what I thought was like RP 7.5, 8. I did 324 this week for the exact same RP. Under no circumstances other than I don't know, I felt better that day. Maybe I had recovery better. Maybe it was just, maybe I was misjudging the RP from the week prior. But I mean, at the same time, maybe you weren't, and maybe you did recover better. better. Maybe you do feel better. Maybe it's just,
Mhm.
I don't know.
And that's what brings me to the point. Like I see a lot of people do it now too, especially when it comes to like some of their accessories and whatnot. They will do just basically they'll put down an RPE and be like, "This is it. Hit it within this." Part of me wants to take a whole training block and apply nothing but that. Like have maybe in the back percentages for each day. What references on which week should be? Check it. Make sure it's kind of within range. But what the athlete sees is just, hey, do this for RPE 6.
Yeah.
Do this load for RPE 6.
So I'd be curious too how they progress then, because people are either going to overshoot or undershoot.
Oh, and if they overshoot, they'll when it comes to I think them developing their own weight, it's either they're going to train themselves to be a little bit more in tune with that, or it can completely just blow up in my face. So it's
there's only one way to find out.
Yeah,
and there's another topic right below it about listening to your body.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, understanding yourself
Mm-hmm.
is definitely. I mean, I'm not saying anything against a training block on the RP. I'd be curious to see how your athletes respond. I really will.
And I'm just right now I'm just doing it to myself.
Hmm.
So I'm doing it myself with the injuries I have and everything, because I think that would be the most appropriate. If I'm just basing it off of percentages and I want myself to hit that, I feel like I'm more likely to plateau or aggravate injuries. And if I go off of, because my injuries also go to impact my RPE, because I might be able to injury free be able to do that RPE 6, but with an injury that RPE 6 is now maybe a 7.
Yeah.
So that's I'm letting my body speak to me with what I choose.
Yeah.
So
I was saying within that too, just right below it is, and it kind of ties back into like not being lazy and just understanding your shortcomings and understanding I'm not good at this right now, but I'm not going to get mad about it. I'm going to understand that I'm not good at it, and instead of skipping this accessory because oh fuck this, I'm not good at it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to get better at it. You got to understand where you fall, and basically one of those things where you have to tell yourself, I'm never going to fall here again. I'm not going to allow myself to do so.
And that's also, I will put you to the point where it's like, it's okay if you fall to a point where it's like, if you're like,
well, you need that fall to understand where those shortcomings are. That's.
But you have to be okay with, if you are trying, you actually know you're trying, and you somehow fall back in there, and it's like, oh, I will never have this happen again. It happens again. What are you gonna do? You're gonna spiral down, and you're gonna go back into a mindset because you're like, oh, I told myself I wasn't gonna do this. What am I doing wrong? And all that stuff. Just be okay with that. Yeah. Be okay and just move on from it. And that's hard for everyone.
I mean, my verbiage could have changed by all means. It's not like I never want to feel this again. I never want to fall into this space again. It's I understand I may fall again, but I have the tools to allow myself to understand that like this happened. How am I going to get out of it? How am I going to get better than this? And if you fail, but you keep trying, don't fail. That's at least my opinion on that one.
Yeah. No, for me, it's definitely like you're probably going to hit a low at some point in your training. You're definitely going to hit a low. If you haven't yet, Godspeed. But after you hit that low, you're probably going to hit another low, and that low might be lower or just slightly above it. But you always want to be okay with if that happens. If it happens due to your own stupidity, then you have like a really strong correlation. But if it doesn't happen to that direct reason for that poor training quality or something that's easily changed and just something happens, you have to be okay with it, because that will compromise how you approach things. That will compromise your adherence to it, and that is going to be the strongest factor, is your actual adherence to it. So if you let that get compromised by something that you promised yourself when you should have been more just like, you can still promise yourself something, but promise that you're going to be okay with another low, and that you know that you're just confident in your own work ethic as well. That confidence with that work ethic will make you okay with achieving that low, and coming back from it. So,
yeah, I was saying we can end too with that last topic right there at the bottom, about listening to your coach. Your coach is not, unless they're just giving you some cookie cutter bullshit that they care minimally about. If you find a good coach, they're going to give you stuff that's going to make you better.
Your handwriting's horrible.
Thank you. That was right at the bottom of the page. It's really hard to write down there, I promise. And you have to listen to your coach. And not only listen to your coach, because chances are if they're a good coach, they're going to be giving you things that are truly going to make you better.
Mm-hmm.
And do the accessories that they prescribe you,
Mm-hmm.
because they know you're training at that point, or should have a decent idea.
Mm-hmm.
And they understand your weaknesses maybe better than you do, so they give you accessories to focus on those. And then if you have friends that are friends with those coaches, and you try and help other people too, listen to those people too, because chances are they might, like me. I don't want to toot my own horn by any means, but I spent hours on YouTube, on Google, combing through articles on Elite FTS, on Juggernaut training systems, on actual scientific articles, watching podcasts, watching introductory and advanced videos on YouTube. I spent hours just trying to understand coaching, training, programming, body mechanics to a less degree than just training and like programming and what it means. And so on that same note, like the people that have a little bit more education, and now my education may be like self-taught, but at the same time, those people that seem to know more, that might know more than you, listen to them. Listen to somebody that's been lifting longer, especially.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't listen to someone that just has more education, listen to someone that's been in the gym for 20 fucking years.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to know even more than your coach does.
Oh, yeah. No, that kind of brings up one example, too, is when I was at UNL, I would help out in the exercise physiology lab once in a while, and I knew those guys. And when I'd see them in the gym, it was like they have they're smart guys. Mm-hmm. All these dudes were pretty smart. It was like watching a child learn how to pick something up and put it back down. Sometimes it was just awkward form. It was awkward technique. I remember seeing squatting technique done with not appropriate, like there's not a maintenance of like a neutral spine, or there's just awkward foot placement, the allowance of valgus, and all these little points. That's like, man, you read all these books, you understand like power output, what's substantial positioning, and all this stuff, but it's like you're just book smart.
Yeah.
And then like, yeah, you can, that still allows you to go and talk to that person and tell them what to expect, but you should be all held to that same degree and expect that from yourself, and then learn how to describe it in maybe a different way from doing it yourself. Because when you explain everything in a textbook style, you're going to just be saying it with probably a lot of big words and something that might, and something that's not very relatable to maybe what the person's dealing with or thinking too.
Yeah, and that's I've learned the biggest way to learn is try to explain it to someone else. Mm-hmm. And so, like, to kind of polish off this topic, and you can say anything else you want to, just be humble. If someone tries to help you, if someone, especially like if they're a friend, or if they're your coach specifically, or they're a friend of your coach, or they're someone with actual education within the sport, someone who's been in the gym for 20 fucking years, and you ask them for help, or they come up to you because they see something in you that, they want you to be better, so they offer you advice. Now, I don't recommend offering just, unsolicited advice to random strangers in the gym, but at the same time,
go up to the biggest guy and tell him he's doing something wrong.
At the same time, be humble. If they're going to try and help you, don't just brush it off.
Yeah.
Don't take what your coach says. Don't take what your coach programs and prescribes you specifically to help you and just say, I don't want to do that because that sounds terrible. Mm-hmm. Be humble. Listen to your coach. Listen to what they want you to do, and listen to the people that want you to be better.
Mm-hmm. That actually brings me to one thing, too. This guy on Instagram makes reels, TikToks, whatever, and he dresses up as a fucking janitor.
Oh, Anatoly.
Anatoly, yeah. I'm not gonna lie, like going to random gyms and being like going up to people and all these things and just like, oh, how can I do this? Like going up and acting as if you're this weak person and everything to then outdo them or anything of that nature. It's funny to an extent, but then it's also like it's kind of unnecessary, and it's like I understand it's for the content and everything like that, but your persona in itself is being shown through that content that you're putting out there because that's something that you are okay with doing, and that is basically showing off. And you're not doing anything at a competitive standpoint. Who knows? I don't know if that person actually competes. I assume they probably fucking do, but if they just go around gyms just to fucking piss on people's egos, then you're kind of a shitty fucking person for that.
100%. At the same time, some people's egos do need pissed on, but you shouldn't float your own ego just to piss on other people's ego.
Yeah. It's like, and you've seen like videos of like, oh god, I forgot who it was that was like dressed up as like an old ass man and would go out and just go to random like courts, like thinking like New York or somewhere, and just fucking bag on people for basketball.
I went and saw the movie Uncle Drew. That was fun.
Yeah, that was really like based off of people doing that shit. So it's like doing that, like so, like I can understand that being like a root of it and continue on. It's like I don't know when it comes to like the gym per se, there's a point. It's like it's all there for development. I don't like seeing the people that truly like show off in front of others, like have everything recording. Everybody look at me, do this real quick, like fuck off. And it's like there, I don't know. I that part of me, like that's. Yeah. They're not even humble brags; they're just brags. Like,
yeah, 100%. And on that same note, like if you're doing something, and the rest of the gym turns to watch you do it, don't let it get to your head.
Yeah.
Personally, I hate it. It's happened because it's happened, and I don't like it. Mm-hmm. So I want people to do their own thing, but instead, I'm in the last block. We were doing high bar. I was doing my top set of high bar. I was like 4 or 5 people stopping everything they were doing just to look at me doing my set. Like,
it gets to that point too. If you're like, I don't know that well, everyone's gonna look at you in a competition.
I mean, yeah.
So
I mean, it's not like I hate it. I don't want to. I enjoy it. Everyone's gonna enjoy attention once in a while, but at the same time, you don't want people to disregard their own training just to watch what you're doing. That's. I don't know. That's how I've always thought, because I've always focused on my own training and kind of not like angrily or upset like side-eyed people, but like watch what they're doing while I'm in between sets or something like that. But like being openly stared at, I don't personally always enjoy.
Yeah,
especially in training.
Yeah, that's fair. I probably should stop wearing my short swim trunks too. I think that's just
stop taking your shirt off, you fucking animal.
It gets spicy in here. It gets very spicy.
But yeah, I mean, and just I guess this last couple minutes we were both talking a little bit, humble brags a little bit, but at the same time, sometimes it's not necessary, but like it happens.
Yeah.
But on that same note, make sure you stay humble in the gym.
Absolutely.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah, and yeah, everyone's there to like do their own thing, and I think we've honestly said this in one podcast prior, so this is probably to a repetitive point, but yeah, it's no matter how much like weight you can move and all that stuff or anything like that, it's you're truly no different than anyone else, and there's just one thing that you're good at that they might not be good at, and then you come to find out they're good at maybe 1 or 2 things that you're not good at, so on and so forth.
There's always a bigger fish.
Yeah, there is always a bigger fish.
I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. I think we actually got through all of our topics, and we did it in a fairly decent time frame.
Thinking about fish now.
I don't usually think about fish. I don't like fish too much.
Fish. Oh my god.
Salmon's okay, I suppose.
Yeah.
Has to be smoked, otherwise.
Yeah, I might get some fish. But
yeah, I don't have any other closing remarks. Just say for that, be humble. Don't be a dick.
Yep.
But also don't be a bitch.
And then make sure to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds.
Okay.